12 whole minutes. I could have boiled pasta, watched a cat fall off a counter in slow motion, or stared at a wall and learned more about freedom than what I just sat through. Part 2, where the theological train wreck not only continues, but accelerates down the hill of bad logic with flaming brakes and a choir humming solemnly in the background. If Part 1 was 9 minutes of obey your earthly oppressor, but wink if it's for Jesus, then Part 2 is the spiritual Stockholm Syndrome remix. You're not really a slave if you believe hard enough. Let's start with the gall of trying to make this sound like some cosmic liberation anthem. You were bought with a price, he exclaims, as if that somehow makes it better. Bro, you literally just replaced one master with another and called it freedom. If I get kidnapped and then sold to a nicer kidnapper who tells me I'm free in my soul, I'm still tied up in someone's basement. Don't spiritualize captivity and then act like you just handed me emancipation papers. And the circular logic. It's like a sermon written by a theological Ouroboros. You're a slave, but also free, but you're a freed slave who is now a slave again, but this time to God, which means you're actually free, unless you disobey, in which case, back to slavery. I've had less confusing conversations with a magic 8-ball. Let's not skip over the bold attempt to drag in civil obedience and equate governors with slave masters, as if pay your taxes and serve your earthly oppressor with goodwill are somehow in the same moral genre. This man really looked at slavery and said, you know who gets it? The DMV. And the cherry on top? The smug suggestion that Christian slave owners in the early church were probably just so moved by the idea that their slaves belonged to Jesus. Really? You think Master Lucius heard you can't have two masters and said, wow, better let Demetrius go? No, he probably just added a crucifix to the whipping post and called it discipleship. In the end, Part 2 is just the second half of a hymn to cognitive dissonance, a theological lullaby whispering, shh. It's not slavery if you imagine Jesus smiling at you while you suffer. I came here for insight and left with heartburn. Let us never forget, you can baptize the whip, but it still leaves marks.